The Hexenzirkel, a group of witches that lately is literally everywhere we look, but also a group we know very little of. Reason why today we're going to figure out who they are and why these organizations exist in the first place. But first, this is a theory video. I will use information available in the game, but my theories and conclusions are not to be considered the official lore of the game, unless I got something right and it's confirmed in a later update of the game itself. Now, the Hexenzirkel are a secret, although not so secret, organization of powerful mages, although not all of them are actually mages, that has been around for a very long time, at the very least since before the Cataclysm, and they chose Mondstadt as their base of operation. Initially they opposed the Animal Archon, but in the end he befriended them and he even protects their meeting place with his winds. The Hexenzirkel was founded by Alice, and the main requirement to become a member is being extremely interesting in her eyes, and each mage specializes in a specific field, be it a certain kind of magic or something else entirely if they can't use magic. Since we know very little about them, today we will check them out one by one, and we will also use the first video we saw in version 3.5, the hints we found in the Imaginarian Theater, especially what I will call the rose window that appears in the accolades and credits when we get 8 stars, and I say we even though I've never seen it myself, and in the end we will obviously talk about the book The Little Witch and the Undying Fire, which needs a section of its own. With that being said, put on your massive witch hats and let's get this video started! The first mage we're gonna talk about is the founder of the Hexenzirkel, the one we know a little bit more about, but also a mage with too much power and too many loose screws, Alice. She is very powerful, so much that Albedo defined her as a near omnipotent witch. Unlike the other mages who only specialize in one single field, her knowledge is very vast, although it seems that she mainly focuses on inventing stuff inspired on things she saw in other worlds, and on making things or even landscapes go kaboom. Same mother, same daughter. We don't know what she looks like, just like the other mages, but we do know that she has elf ears like Klee, and that they both belong to a still unnamed long-lived race of beings. She is extremely old, so much as she sees Yaemiko as a little girl and Yoimiya's father as a kid, and that's ignoring Neko being that fat cat and Asaze Hibiki as a Killjoy Shrine Maiden. Alice is known because she wrote the Teyvat travel guide, which feels more like a travel blog on paper. This series of books is important because it shows her character, meaning how insane she is. Her head is always in the clouds and she clearly doesn't have any common sense. I mean, she wanted to understand how Vanessa ascended to Celestia, so she grabbed the Hilichurl and threw it in the sky to see how far it went from Windrise, making it crash into Springvale, which, by the way, what's up with the Hulk strength even? Anyway, the most important questions about Alice are two. How old is she and where does she come from? Her age is an enigma. She is certainly more than 500 years old because she met Rhinedottir when she was still in Caria, but I think she's way older than that, and my theory is based on where she might come from. She's obviously not from Mondstadt, we can deduce it from how she describes the various areas of the nation in the travel guide, and in the gliding instruction manual she is defined as a tourist. She sounds like she's from Mondstadt simply because it's where she met her husband, an adventurer, and then settled down there when they had Klee, because Mondstadt's freedom will allow Klee to grow up curious and become whoever she wants to become. As for where she's from, my current theory is that she is from Enkanomiya. In the Byakuyakuku collection, the book called In the Light Beneath the Shadow has a list of names of historical figures, some of which are people of the past like Aberaku, while others lived when the people started to go back to the surface like Ante. Among these names there's Eris, who in Narukami style is called Arisu. Of course, this Arisu could be anyone, but Eris was the Greek goddess of discord and strife that threw the golden apple on the table of the gods, causing the whole Trojan War, and Alice owns the Golden Apple Archipelago. Something else that makes me think that this theory might be right is how she said in 1.6 that Klee is a present for her from the sea and the wind. The wind represents her husband, being from Mondstadt, while she is the sea, and the people of Enkanomiya and later of Watatsumi Island are deeply connected with the concept of the sea. By the way, if she came from Fontaine, she would have probably said water instead of sea. Lastly, in Simulanka, Capei, Boborano, and Albisi represented the clans of Vigor, Wisdom, and Empathy, which are awfully identical to the three great martial trials in Enkanomiya, namely the trials of Vigor, Wisdom, and Insight. One thing about her is still very odd though. She's traveled the entire world, and yet the way she describes Mondstadt in her guide feels like she's just seeing it for the first time, although it was written not too long before Klee was born because Jean assigned Ember to follow her to prevent her from destroying the nation, while the Hexenzirkel already had meetings in Mondstadt 500 years ago. Now, you could say that I'm playing too much Honkai Impact, and you might be right, but I think Alice is fighting erosion by removing memories that she doesn't need, just like Fu Hua used Feng Huang down to achieve the same goal, since her body couldn't keep up with 50,000 years of memories. Erosion in Genshin Impact happens when long-lived beings accumulate too many memories, so the earliest and core memories get deleted to make space, causing those beings to go berserk. But by removing some memories, Alice would be making space, avoiding erosion altogether. Anyway, moving on, where is Alice now? Well, we know that she left together with her husband to go to a dangerous place far away 3 years ago, probably to fix the borders of Teyvat that have become fragile, as she told Klee in the Wings of Feasting. Considering my theory about Cryo being the element of the fake sky, Snezhnaya will probably have the flat earther theory that the world is surrounded by an insurmountable ice wall that keeps everything inside, past which there could be the Sea of Flowers at the end that will show us what Teyvat really is. As a consequence, I think Alice is now in Snezhnaya, so we probably won't meet her for another haul here. Contrary to what people believe, despite her mission, she has come back to Mondstadt recently. She came back after the 2.8 summer event to meet Klee, to explain to Albedo why the Fatui were using the Golden Apple Archipelago, which is extremely sus, and right before 3.8 to give Venti the Dodo communication device that he later gave us. When it comes to the Hexenzirkel symbols, despite the fact that we talked to her twice through the Lantern of Utmost Joy, I think it's pretty clear that in the rose window, her symbol is the peach teacup with the levitating teaspoon that we also saw in the first Hexenzirkel video when she talked to the other mages. This also means that she is the blue witch bottom right in the first wheel, the one seen from the back as if she's walking away. The next witch is the old hag, B. Barbeloth Trismegistus. She is the Madame Mage from the Imaginarium Theater, and she specializes in astromancy. Although being able to read the fate of the entire world, she can be defined as a visionary. Despite these incredible powers, she is very full of herself, and sometimes she is very immature, to the point of changing her title from Magistus, the Great, to Trismegistus, thrice Great, just to assert her superiority over Mona. Barbeloth is a long-lived being, although we don't know what kind. According to Mona, she should be a few hundred years old, and considering she knew Andersdotter, she's at the very least 500 years old. As for where she's from, I honestly think she's from Liyue for a simple reason. We met Mona in Liyue, and at the end of her story quest, she said that she couldn't go back and face Barbeloth, so she should be in Liyue. Of course, she could be living there while being from another nation, but in The Little Witch, Barbeloth talks about the Nephilim, children of humans and gods, which makes me think that she might be just like Ganyu, half human, half Adeptus, and this would justify her long life, meaning that she could even be thousands of years old, something we will talk about again later. As for her symbol in the rose window, it's obviously the multi-pointed star, which means that for some reason she's not in the first wheel, although her multi-pointed star is, strangely, at the center of the circle, maybe to show that the organization was decided by destiny? Next is the alchemist, R. Rhinedottir Gold. She's from Caria, and she was alive during the Crimson Moon Dynasty, because she created the Rift Wolves that the Beastmaster Knights commanded back then. This means that she might have been cursed twice, once when the Crimson Moon Dynasty fell, the same curse as Arlecchino, and one when the Eclipse Dynasty fell, the curse of the Cataclysm, and this could be the reason why she has only little precious lucid time. She created a lot of monsters, Elena's was one of them, and he said that he had older siblings, so Durin and other massive monsters that we haven't encountered yet, and smaller younger siblings, the Rift Wolves. She specializes in alchemy, and having reached its pinnacle, she was able to use Chemia, a very ancient, forgotten, and dangerous kind of alchemy that focuses on the creation of life. When the cataclysm happened, she became known as one of the 5 sinners of Caria, people who acquired powers so great that basically put them on the same level as the gods. But despite that, they didn't do anything to stop the cataclysm, and I think they wanted it to happen in order to acquire even greater powers. According to Skirk, she's pursuing a form of perfection, which probably is the Primordial Human Project, that brought to life Sasbedo, the failed experiment we met in 2.3, and then Albedo, her masterpiece. According to her, she raised Albedo as a mother, although Albedo only remembers a cold, strict woman who threatened to abandon him if he didn't meet her expectations. They traveled together from domain to domain, and when they found the heart of Navarius, she suddenly left Albedo, leaving him a letter to Alice so that she could help him build a huge alchemy lab to accomplish the last mission she gave him, showing her the truth and meaning of the world, reason why he is now a member of the Knights of Favonius. Apart from this, we know nothing else, we don't even know where she is now or what she's doing. As for her symbol on the rose window, it's very easy, it's the golden alchemy vial we saw in the first video, so she is the blue witch with a drop levitating between her hands. Next is the most beloved one, M, Anya Andersdotter. Unlike the previous ones, she was neither long-lived nor a mage, she was a normal human and a writer, but an extraordinary one at that. Her works and knowledge were so astounding that she managed to understand the world's operating principles better than an astrologist. She was alive before the cataclysm because she met the original Durin, and died sometimes after the cataclysm because she created a version of Durin in Simulanka to give him the good ending the real one didn't have. We mainly know her to be the author of The Boar Princess, a fairy tale for children with the most disturbing ending ever, but that's because it's based on a real story. Alice said that she learned the concept of grief through Andersdotter's book, which could mean that she was either unable to feel grief, or that she experienced grief for the first time when she read Andersdotter's books after her passing. Differently from many people, I think that the mage who wields a quill pen and Fantasy Truth ink to cast her spell is Andersdotter. She didn't really cast any spell, it's just that her stories were so good that they could be considered magical. Plus Wolfie also said that the other mages used the power of creation to transform her Fantasy Truth into true fantasy, which was a hint at Simulanka. We weren't told where Andersdotter was from, but I think she's from Natlan for 2 simple reasons. Her statues in Simulanka show her adorned with tribal kinds of tattoos like the people of Natlan, and her hairstyle is very unique. But also in The Little Witch, we were told about this witch that joined a magic school in the westernmost continent, which is Natlan, but we're gonna talk more about this in the dedicated section. As for her symbol, like Rhinedottir, hers is the most obvious one. In the rose window, it's the Boar Princess that we also saw in the first video together with the quill pen and the ink bottle, so on the first wheel she is the pink witch bottom left, the one with a light in her hand, which again is explained in The Little Witch. Next is the governor, J, Ivanovna N. Just like Andersdotter, she was a regular human who lived around the time of the cataclysm and had no magic training. I honestly don't know why she's J, maybe she was someone's successor? Anyway, she was from Snezhnaya and she became the first mayor, which makes me think that before the cataclysm, so before the Tsaritsa became the Archon, Snezhnaya was just an expanse of ice inhabited by people without any kind of government or capital city, which is also the reason why I think The Pale Princess and the Six Pygmies, another book probably written by Andersdotter, especially considering the rose on the cover, is about Ivanovna and Snezhnaya. In the game, we only have the first volume, but I know that the entire collection has been leaked a long time ago. Since I decided not to read it just like many other viewers, please refrain from talking about the unreleased volumes in the comment section. Anyway, apart from the fact that the Pale Princess is based on Snow White and Snezhnaya is ice and snow, this book is all about a freezing land, the Land of Night, ruled by the evil Night Mother, probably the original Cryo Archon, but also about the Moonlight Forest, the only place the Night Mother had no authority over and in which the people enjoyed the light of the moon, which made them pale with light-colored hair and blue eyes. The eternal night sky could be related to the fake sky, probably being the main theme in Snezhnaya, and the Night Mother sounds like a tyrannical archon that used to rule the nation, while the Tsaritsa changed things entirely, turning the land into a fully fledged nation. Back to Ivanovna, we know that she left the Hexenzirkel because she was getting married, but when her husband grew old and weak, she decided to put an end to his life to ease his suffering, and told the other witches the following day as if it was nothing, which again denotes the lack of common sense of the witches. After Ivanovna's death, Alice never acknowledged any of her students as her successor, which shows how important Ivanovna actually was, but that changed when Scarlet made her appearance in 3.5. As for her symbol, we were never given a hint. The imagery associated with her are roses, thorns, clocks, and a clover made of hearts, so nothing that appears on the rose window. Despite that, I believe, for a reason I'll talk about later, that her symbol is the top left heart-shaped chocolate box looking thing, so she would be the top left pink witch with a star or sun in her hands. Next is the voice in our heads, and Nicole, the last witch we were officially introduced to. She has an excellent sense of direction, she is the guide who will never get lost, and she has the habit to suddenly start speaking in people's minds if they need help or if she senses a change has occurred in the world. We basically know nothing about Nicole, we can't even be sure whether she's alive or not, since Mona said if she were still alive, but I do have a theory. Wolfie told us that the Master of the Boar tribe once punished the Boars for their wrongdoings using a set of rusty scales. The Boars had to place something they own on them, and if they tipped, they would be free, but they were rusty so they never tipped, so the Boars all got transformed into something else. One specific boar though placed everything she had evenly on them, even her voice, thus breaking the scales and becoming a mute person, but also one of Barbeloth's friends, so Nicole. Up until now, the Boars have always represented the people of Mondstadt, so that could be Nicole's nation, but this also makes me think that the Boar Princess is about Nicole's life. A boar that sacrificed and ate her companions to save the wolf cub from his curse, so definitely an evildoer. I believe that the wolf cub may have been Andreas, who lived in probably an unreleased section of Mondstadt close to Snezhnaya, since it's a frozen tundra, where the animal Archon hadn't gone to yet, as the book says. The evil being that cursed and was eaten by the wolf was probably a cryo god that lived in Mondstadt, the same being that gave him its cryo powers, as Andreas' description says. Sadly, the last volume of The Boar Princess was sold out in the Fortress of Meropide, so we don't know how the story ends, but if Nicole is the Boar Princess, then she would be around 3000 years old? As for her symbol, I have a theory. I know that it is believed that the top right symbol on the rose window looks like her teapot, but I honestly don't see it, it doesn't even look like a teapot in the first place. Plus, after Simulanka, I'm not even sure if that tea set really represents her, since Andersdotter and Barbeloth used it while talking about Durin. Instead, I think her symbol is the butterfly bottom left, so the purple witch holding a flame for 2 reasons. Nicole accepted Paimon's definition of her being a voice from the sky, while the second reason is the same as Ivanovna, so we're gonna talk about it in a few seconds. The last witch we know but were never really introduced to is the Venturer, Octavia. This may not be her real name, it's just what she calls herself in The Little Witch, so let's go with that. We know very little about her. Her home was destroyed, but she lacked the courage to fight and chose a life of eternal wandering that led her to countless other worlds, so she almost never comes back to Teyvat, reason why the witches don't even bother placing a chair at the table for her. Now, saying that her home was destroyed, especially in Teyvat, is just too vague. She could be from Salvindagnir, Chenyu Vale, the Chasm, Sumeru before the nail descended and turned it into a desert, or even from Remuria, or maybe from a destroyed place in Natlan or Snezhnaya that we don't know yet. It's impossible to figure this out. She knew Andersdotter, so she was alive 500 years ago, and she is probably the one showing Alice images of the worlds she's exploring, telling her about them, reason why Alice knows about the Rubicon, giving her ideas for her inventions, and even bringing stuff back, like the idol magazine Alice gave Barbara. As for her symbol, you probably won't agree with me, but I think it's the bottom right lantern of Atmos Joy looking symbol on the rose window, which means that she's the blue witch with a book under her arm. Why did I choose that symbol? Again, one reason is the same as Nicole and Ivanovna, while the other is that although we talk to Alice through the lantern, it is a device that connects people over great distances, maybe even across worlds, and in the first video we saw the lantern at the end despite the fact that Alice is represented by the peach teacup, so maybe Octavia participates in the meetings with her voice, being unable to come back whenever she wants. Now, the rose window shows 9 witches, the table has only 7 chairs, and we talked about 7 witches, one of which doesn't have a chair at the table. This means that there are 2 more unknown witches. One was sitting at the table, while the other is a massive question mark. The 2 remaining symbols are the cupcake, which should be the one sitting at the table because we see a dessert table stand with cupcakes, while the other symbol is that thing that honestly looks like a cooking pot. Anyway, it's time to explain why I picked specific symbols for Ivanovna, Nicole and Octavia. You see, I didn't specify the color of the witches in the first wheel for no reason. I believe that the color indicates whether they're alive, dead or somewhere in between. We know that Alice is alive and she's blue, while we know that Andersdotter is dead and she's pink. Barbeloth, who has been said to be very old and probably reaching the end of her life, as she herself hinted in the unnamed slip in the Imaginarium Theater, has a pink background but with a blue clover, so it's like she's going toward the side of the dead witches. Nicole's situation instead is very unique. She is in the blue background, so among the living, but her clover is neither blue nor pink, it's deep purple, a color only she has, which together with the flame and the butterfly, a symbol often associated with death or the souls of the dead, I mean look at Hu Tao, makes me think that she is alive but at the same time something like dead. If this theory is right, then Ivanovna has to be the chocolate box on the pink background, because she's dead, and whoever the cupcake, so the pink witch with her hand up, represents is dead as well. While the cooking pot on the other side, the witch reading a book, is a living witch, although her background, similar to Rhinedottir, her clover and her color in the first video are green, which means that her circumstances are weird, maybe she's under some kind of curse. Lastly, I am well aware that people believe the butterfly to be Signora, since her constellation is a moth, so it's a butterfly, but that whole theory is based on her liquid fire being the undying flame from the little witch, and we perfectly know that it's not the case, but don't worry, it's finally time to talk about this book. The Little Witch and the Undying Fire is easily one of the most interesting books, probably on the same level as Before Sun and Moon. It was written by the witches of the Hexenzirkel and it was supposed to be a gift to Andersdotter, probably a way to show her that they loved her and that she inspired them to write a book just like she did, but sadly they never managed to present it to her, because she passed away in volume 5. My goal here is to explain what the book says about the witches, but I also have a final crazy theory, and if you know me, you know that I've never shied away from making bold claims with little info, whether they end up being right or not. By the way, I will skip the second and sixth volumes because they need dedicated sections considering what they talk about. The first volume was written by Alice, and just like almost every other witch, she added herself into the story, so in this case, she is the teacher who gave the little witch the task to find the Undying Fire and bring it back. The third volume was written by Rhinedottir, who talked about Ascension Mold, the mimic demon king, that temporarily transformed people into their ideal state, which honestly sounds like the curse of Karya, turning people into what may or may not be their primordial form, so without memories and souls. The fourth volume was written by Ivanovna, It's all about governing and laws, and she inserted herself into the story as the mayor of the city. The whole point, I think, is that the Demon Kings are Nephilim, just like the dominant race of the world that the second volume talks about, so they have just as many rights as anybody else, so maybe Ivanovna defended the people transformed by the curse, seeing them as people and not as monsters. The fifth volume, written by Nicole, is very short, most likely because she was grieving for Andersdotter's passing, so she couldn't care less about writing. It only says that the trial was over and that the little witch couldn't obtain the witch license. The seventh and last volume was written by all the witches together, and its purpose is to tell Andersdotter their feelings for her, but also how much they missed her. Andersdotter, as a regular human with no magic powers, always felt inadequate, not on the same level as the other witches, but she was wrong. The witches have always considered her an equal. In this volume, we understand that the little witch is both Andersdotter on her lifelong quest to become a witch like the others, but also the Hexenzirkel as a whole, because again, she's always been one of them. On the other hand, the old witch is just Andersdotter. The undying flame means that even though she died, she will forever live in their hearts, and they will show the world her works so that everybody will know and forever remember about her. The Old Witch is also defined as the star of Scorpio, so Antares, the rival of Ares, a bright red star that can be mistaken for Mars in the sky, although between you and me, stars twinkle, planets don't. That's how you tell them apart in the sky. Antares is a fitting name for Andersdotter because the star in ancient Mesopotamia was called the Heart of Scorpion, and was believed to be either Nabu, the god of literacy, rational arts, scribes, and wisdom, but also the goddess of fire Lising, which again seems to point at Andersdotter being from Natlan. I am well aware that people think that Signora is the little witch because, again, her liquid fire is a kind of undying flame, and because in Chinese the funerary mask talks about a star of Scorpion, but yeah, that's obviously not the case. Now, the second volume is probably the most interesting one because it explains a lot about Teyvat and the universe. It was written by Barbeloth, who inserted herself in the story as the fortune teller, and she talks about Nephilim, the sons of humans and gods, which, as I said before, probably refers to the Adepti and to Barbeloth being a half Adeptus like Ganyu. She talks about the stars being heavenly strings that bound the humans, so predetermined fate, something we already know very well. She also talks about the universe and how the solar, lunar, planetary, and cosmic energies that normally affect the world are weakened in Teyvat because of the fake sky acting as a protective dome. But what's most interesting is the concept of real and virtual planets. In the universe, planets with sentient beings are defined as Archons, while theorized planets like Teyvat are defined as virtual planets, which reminds me of Mars in Honkai Impact being a giant quantum computer with data people living their lives as if they were real humans in a real world. Barbeloth also said that there are 7 wills that came down from the heavens, who are also called Archons, and just like before, there are also 7 virtual wills, and they can be 1, 2, or 4. Get ready because I have a massive theory that suddenly popped in my mind when I read this passage for maybe the 10th time. The 7 real Archons she talks about are the 7 Dragon Authorities, powers that came from a real planet, the Old World, where the Dragon Sovereigns lived, so basically the Light Realm. This aligns perfectly with the 7 heavens from Gnosticism, that is the Moon, Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, celestial bodies that they defined as stars or planets, each presided over by an Archon. The 7 virtual wills instead are the Archons of Teyvat, the gods that rule over the nations, and they can be 1 like Venti and Zhongli, 2 like Rukkhadevata and Nahida, Makoto and Ei, Ijiria and Fossolor, and the original Cryo Archon and the Tsaritsa, or 4 like the Archons that I actually theorized to have been in Natlan, 1 for each Samsara cycle, so the original 1 in the first era of Teyvat, 1 in the Envoy Age, 1 in the era of the gods of old, and the last one being Mavica. This also aligns perfectly with Gnosticism because the serpent that taught Adam and Eve to transgress was sent to Earth, where he created 7 counterparts of the heavens on Earth, ruled by 7 demons, for which are Michael, Suriel, Raphael, and Gabriel, the same 4 names that appear on Mona's Astrolab in version 2.8. As for the Dark Sun mentioned in the book, this is a term that has only been used twice, as a way to identify the Eclipse dynasty of Khaenri'ah, and in the achievement When the Dark Sun Passes, when we learn Rukkhadevata's actions to save the desert in version 3.1, probably referred to Deshret, a god that, as I mentioned in a previous video, may have had some dealings with Khaenri'ah. This dark sun, going back to Gnosticism, may be the 8th heaven, the sphere of the fixed stars, in which the mother of the Archons resided, which was either the Aeon Sophia that we've talked about in many older videos, or the first emanation of God, the eternal Aeon called Barbeloth. Now, I left the 6th volume for last because this may be hinting at the main purpose of the Hexenzirkel as an organization. This volume was written by the witch that calls herself Octavia and O in the book itself. As we said before, she's an eternal wanderer and she travels to different worlds, reason why I define her as a venturer. What's important about this volume is that Octavia brought bad news about the universe. She said that the cosmos is about to die soon, that things peaked not long ago, many stars in the cosmos have started to die out, and that she's not sure how much time is left before everything starts going south fast. What Octavia said reminds me of the Wings of Feasting from before, in which Alice went to the borders of Teyvat to fix them, but also about the little witch saying that Barbeloth foretold an apocalypse that is about to come. Talking about Barbeloth, her Imaginarium theater is very unique, and it seems like it was created based on the same concept. First of all, time in that domain is still, but above all, the theater exists before the story begins and after the story ends, and every page of the storybook is a segment of the present. This all seems to point toward an inevitable concept that exists both in Honkai Impact and in Star Rail, and give it time it will appear in Zenless Zone Zero as well. The finality. The Hexenzirkel seems like an organization that is actively trying to prevent this foretold apocalypse from happening, each with their own specialization, be it inventions, conjuring, illusions, alchemy, astrology, and so on. As a consequence, I think that the Hexenzirkel are the Genshin Impact equivalent of negentropy or anti-entropy. This is my usual bold claim, and it's clearly too early to be sure about anything, but then again, what's the harm in trying to guess something with so few hints? Did I get it right, or was I completely off the mark? Only time will tell. And that's it, I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, and if you're interested in Genshin Impact or Star Rail Theory videos, consider subscribing. I will see you again very soon, because the 5.0 livestream is almost here, and I'm definitely making yet another Nutland video. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, over and out.